Hi, everybody. Welcome to the recording today and the webinar. Really a big privilege to have Des Allen here. And this is not your typical lunchtime seminar. It's a little bit different because it's not called a lunchtime seminar, but we thought it would do it at this time because it's most appropriate for most people. Look, the webinar today is looking at operational risk in a different way, looking it in the eye and learning how to take a practical approach to identifying and approaching the situations and circumstances that constantly plague management and keep us all up awake at night. It's not about what you should or shouldn't do. It's really showing you opportunities out there, what Des has come up with, and I'll let him elaborate on that. And it's also very exciting that we're having these webinars and getting people on board who are innovators, coming up with different ways of looking at risk management, governance, and how to actually get that information data in organizations, especially looking at the management. So today we're going to cover things like improved decision-making, enhanced employee engagement, and strategic alignment. Just quickly on Des. Des worked in New Zealand consulting. He's New Zealand born. He's living in Australia at the moment. And he did coaching and conducting workshops on leadership behaviours, corporate stress and resilience, and fatigue countermeasures, and sleep improvement. So quite a variety there, especially when looking at risk management. He worked with the Fletcher Challenge Group for over 10 years. Other clients included Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, MAF, Quality Management, Biosecurity, New Zealand Customs and Aviation, and a bunch of other companies. So no more for me. Great to have you here, Des, and I'll let you take it away and we'll start the slides.
Okay, thank you very much, David. And I would also like to thank Kimberly and Denise for helping organize this session. So hi, I'm Des, as David mentioned. I'd just like to share with you a few things here, if that's okay. And so we have a little series of slides which I want to present to you to explain a bit of a journey that I've taken over the years. And the outcome was I produced a system called the company pulse analysis. Now, because of the experience that I've had with different countries and different companies, it's able to fit with any industry effectively. So it's a way of looking at the company from a different perspective. The whole system is geared around combining the ability to measure aspects of the business, particularly obviously with the operational side of things. But also what it also does is it shows what is working and why. So when we're talking about getting back to the fundamentals, it's about getting back to the basics about the business. Is it profitable? Is it working? Are the things that we're doing, are they effective? Not just about efficiency, but you can be very efficient at doing the wrong things. So we want to know, how is our company positioned? And so I'd just like to share just a few little things about me, just a few 30 seconds on here. These are the countries that I've worked within, and I've visited them many, many times. It was a great experience being able to see across international boundaries the challenges that companies have. And so one of the things I found that with the companies that I work with, everybody had the same types of problems. There was not really no difference. The only difference was the language that they spoke about how they describe it. And so when I was working within New Zealand, I found that these fabulous companies gave me the basis to be able to go further afield. And so the approach that I decided to take was to look at organizations and what is common about how they run their businesses. And so I came up with 3 fundamental interrelationships that exist in every single company. Now, you already know this. There's a lot of experience out there. So I'm not going to teach you how to suck egg. This is about looking at an approach that you already know about, but you can take it to a deeper level. The first fundamental interrelationship is the relationship that people have with their managers, staff and employees that have with their managers. These are absolutely crucial, as you're well aware. If you get it right, it's great. If you don't, then it causes all sorts of problems. Now, one of the challenges also is, as leaders, you find that there's a lot of publicity about executives, middle management, leaving the companies. And so the increase in these people resigning and going further afield has grown. And so it's not just about staff and their relationship with management, it's management's relationship with themselves. I call this the corporate culture. So we can measure the corporate culture. We need to know how good our managers are, how our leaders are, and have an open book towards communicating about how efficient and effective we are. The second is about the relationships that staff have with their job. Now, this is directly tied to how they relate to their managers. And so when you look at the job satisfaction levels that are up and down, going left and right, it's really a moving platform when it starts to come to people and performing their duties. And we all know that there's substantial losses caused by people continuously leaving. So what we're able to do is to understand the very reasons why people are leaving, not through interviews, but something that's held within themselves, that they are the reasons why it's no longer being satisfied and they're leaving. We also have the other interrelationship, and that is the relationship that staff have with the systems that they use. So when you look at some of the organizations which have, they have significant reporting to do to government bodies, we find sometimes the systems they're old, outdated. And so as a consequence, you may find that some of the systems in place are causing a lot of frustrations, particularly when things keep changing. So as a basis for understanding what's going on, we look at these three key areas. They are extremely complex. However, obtaining information from them is actually, about them, I should say, is very, very easy. And so when you get this working, when these three are in unison and you have less conflict and less risk, you have improved relationships between the colleagues. And so there's a whole array of different things start to change when you get this right. And I know you know this, but the thing is, there are certain departments that may not be, this may not be happening. And so the whole objective is to be able to improve decision-making, save on money that is being lost and in fact is being budgeted for, increasing the productivity because it's a natural byproduct of the way they are feeling, people are feeling, including management. So the engagement and communication, all of these elements here are encased within these three core areas, which result in this. Now, if there are any questions that you'd like to ask, by the way, please just put them through onto the chat, and David and Denise will sort out the appropriate time to answer those. The thing about risk, it needs to be personal. Now, we know that when you're in organizations which have high risk in terms of safety and life and death, we see that risk is taken very, very serious by the employees. However, in the corporate culture, it's not so much life and death, but it's more about losing positions and losing face and not growing in terms of personal development. So there are three fundamental pillars that we look at. And these pillars, we need to be able to ensure that as far as risk is concerned, we have these off pat. And so risk education, risk measurement, and collaboration is absolutely crucial when it comes to risk. In talking with many companies, I found that these particular, this collaboration element, there's a lot of silos, and so there's a communication between departments. It's evolved into an us and a them because the overall cultures are not healthy. And so what we're wanting to do is to be able to look at these key areas. And when we talk about risk education, it's about looking at it without any detrimental impact in raising the fact there is a problem. So the approach that we take is that to make it personal, we need to look at how can we improve the organization. And the organization improves as a byproduct of doing certain things, as you're well aware. The thing that is common with all organizations that hire people is that we need to be able to provide for the key essentials for people to simply do their job. Now, when they're allowed to be able to do their job, they can stay motivated. And motivation, again, is a byproduct of certain factors. And so what we're wanting to do is to be able to identify what will actually bring out their best. One of the things that I've always did when I'm teaching is that the first 15 to 20 minutes, I find out from the class what brings out their best in relation to the jobs that they do. And within that 15 to 20 minutes or so, what we can do is find out how the company is situated, because people are the company. I know we know this, but people really are the company. Without them, we can't do anything. So what we're wanting to do is what do we need to bring out their best? And so the approach we take is that we look at key performance inhibitors. Not your KPIs, but these are inhibitors. Many organizations don't realize how much they influence the capacity of a person to complete their duties efficiently and prevent them from actually achieving their KPIs. So it's important that we understand what are we doing as a company to inhibit the fact that they have a duty to perform and we're limiting them in some way. We need to be looking at leadership effectiveness. And what we do within the CPA, we look at very deep analysis of an individual's effectiveness as a leader. Now, this is not to be interpreted as a witch hunt. It's a case of we want more collaboration within the organization because we're here to help. I know we're from the tax department, we're here to help, but we really need to be able to support each other. And so identifying some of the challenges that leaders face is crucial. And the way that we do this is we look at business areas and we look at those three interrelationships that I mentioned in relation to the context of these business areas. I'll show you these in a bit more detail shortly. So what we're able to do is to look at every aspect of the business from these business area viewpoints. I've mentioned the corporate culture before. This is really, really important because when it's right at the top, that would be fed through. And so everybody has emotions. And so as a consequence, corporate cultures, although they may be senior management, they get stressed as well. And so one of the things that often happens is that you get a massive gap between what the company seeks and what the employees seek. And so this gap is very, very, very common. And what we're able to do is to be able to measure that gap between company requirements and employee requirements and see where we differ. And we can look at this from a business perspective. So although we have company core values and standards, which are really ideals, the reality of the situation is very often they are not being met. So strategy for organizations can be delayed because of the way things are taking place because of the gap between employee needs and company needs. And so what we do is we we look at a series of self-assessments. Each one of these has a self-assessment, and you can pick and choose which assessment you require to take advantage of. And what we're able to do here is to look at individuals, multiples, across individual cost centers or departments. So you have a flexible structure to be able to identify the challenges and also what's working within any department within the organization. And so when we look at the aspects of risk, I was at the conference in New Zealand recently, and they're talking about all the different types of risk. And it was really great conference. And one of the things is that this is the most important thing, because this is what drives the capacity to identify risks. It's the interrelationships that exist within the workforce to be able to identify and to volunteer information. Sometimes I found is that risk was often considered, well, that's a company problem because it's not personalized. And so what we're endeavoring to do here is to personalize risk so that they understand the importance of highlighting factors. And so the way that we do this is we look at the three core areas that I mentioned and look at the patterns that exist in regarding what's working so that we can replicate it in any other part of the company, and what's not working. And when you look at the costs associated with organizations, people cost the most thing, and the interrelationships and the errors and the mistakes and the rework and everything else that takes place. So what we're able to do is to utilize these different self-assessments to measure the impact of what is working and what is not working right across the company. And so the way that we do this is we look at high and detailed levels of any region, sector, division, branch, cost center, anywhere where there's a manager and where people report to them. And so we can look at those from a high to low detail level. We can identify every single person in the company. This may sound a lot, but we can identify the specific motivational needs that are necessary for an individual to stay motivated. And managers need motivation, executives need motivation, CEOs like to stay motivated because they want to help and grow the company. And so we can identify those things quite specifically to an individual. When we start to look at the individual, when we combine them together, you start to see the patterns emerging. So these patterns we identify across these different areas. And this is where you start to see where a person they absolutely think that their leaders are fabulous, but they're not growing anymore. And so there's a potential risk for them to leave. There's a potential risk for them to be disengaged. They may have a great job, the leaders, but the operations are causing so much frustration. So all of this stuff is interrelated. And these are the things I found which right across every single company I've ever worked with around the globe. So we're able to, at a glance, we can see the impact the company is having on the capacity of an individual to meet their KPIs. And so when we look at KPI inhibitors, they prevent a person from achieving their KPIs. And we can look at it across these business areas. And so what we're looking at here now is the ability to be able to see at a glance and provide information at senior management level, middle management level, to be able to take action and mitigate the risks before it happens. And so one of the things that most organizations are fully aware of is the disengagement. The extent of the disengagement, I'm not quite sure how much people know. But what we're able to do is to break this disengagement down to three different levels. People don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, all of a sudden, oh, I'm disengaged today. I'm not going to be productive. Disengagement is a process that takes place over a period of time. And one of the things that's really important, if you want to keep your qualified staff, if you want to keep the people who you value, you need to get looking at this phase here, partially disengaged, because this is where the rut starts to set in. And so over a period of time, things become more severe and they become disengaged until they decide, look, I've had enough here. And what we're able to do is really quickly, and I mean quickly, like within a 24-hour period, understand the level of disengagement that we have. And we can be looking at people who are effectively going to walk out the door if they're not already in the process of resigning. And so it's amazing. I find when I start talking to people about the money that they budget for every year, because we have a 12%, 30%, 15% turnover in staff, and they budget for it every year. And so why not use some of that money and invest it in actually trying to sort problems out and looking at the source? So where the system calculates out lost productivity and who is going, it tends to put who is going to actually be leaving. And so I know I'm probably going a little bit on the fast side here, but I wanted to get through so you can actually ask some questions. So how do we get to know our company? Well, at the present time, most organizations have this organizational structure, and reporting goes through the various centers because they report to other managers. Now, unfortunately, we're fully aware of the fact that sometimes information, we can't pass that up, so it's diluted in some way. It can also be delayed for various reasons. So what we do is we take the organizational structure and we've created a digital representation. So that provides us an ability to dynamically look at any part of the company that you want to measure. And so by using these core business areas, what we can do is to identify at any particular area and see, is it working okay? Is there a red flag going up? And so the important factor here is that it is a direct access, and the system is effectively a reporting function. So people don't have to learn how to use the system per se. What they do is they need to be able to log in and produce their reports and just look at them. So it's not an intensive, massive education about learning about the system. It's about learning, a manager learning how to read his own reports or her own reports. And so the system can be accessible by any manager so that they can see their own particular areas of responsibility across all of these areas or any other areas that they wish to measure. The thing with the workforce and productivity, it's a moving platform, constantly moving. And so you need to be able to keep pace and get the information quickly. And that's what the system does. And so here we have that little report, is a report header here, of looking at 50% of the criteria. In this particular case, it's a small business. 50% of the criteria that 8 people have completed the assessments, and 8 people completed the assessments, and 50% of the criteria that they need to be able to perform their duties to the best of their ability is not being met. So immediately you know that you've got a bit of a problem here. These, by the way, these high risk and low risks here, you set your own targets in terms of what you consider to be a high risk. And so what we're looking at is the ability to look at how many people are really happy in their work. What is not making them happy? So we've got 35% of criteria which is not being met. They need it, they're telling you they need it, but it's not being met. So what we then have is focus, where we can channel our resources to say, let's fix this problem. If you have a problem here, that doesn't mean to say that we're going to do a complete leadership training right across the board. It could be only 3 branches that have a problem. The rest is okay. So don't waste your money trying to educate leaders to be leaders when they're already doing a good job. So what we're able to do is fine tune and stop wasting money focusing on areas that don't need assistance. So we have a whole array of different, we call these review types. So we have a different array of areas that we can measure. And so we can take it down to detail level, individual employee level. By the way, this could be anonymous. Okay, so if it's an anonymous assessment, that just appears anonymous. You don't know who it is. But what you're able to see at a glance is that here is Loretta. In terms of how satisfied she is with her leadership, highlighted areas are telling us that it's not being met and fulfilled. So in terms of job role, we're seeing that anything with a highlight, by the way, is it's not being fulfilled. So what you're seeing, she has a problem with leadership, job role, operations, and team dynamics. And so we're able to get the detailed information about an individual person and what is required to be fixed within that if you want to keep that person. So what we endeavored to do was to not use the scattergun effect and ask questions and things about what are required. We get a person to complete an assessment with no questions. There's no questions in it at all. It's binary. You click it or you don't. Simple as that. It takes about 5 minutes to do. And within this particular time, when I say 5 minutes per assessment, because there's an assessment for each one of these, they all have their own separate databases. And so what we're able to do is to, number one, fine-tune the databases, and number two, be able to access the information that relates to each individual. Now, if an individual goes to HR and says, look, I have a problem here, 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 and here, and go, oh, maybe it's you. Okay, have you looked at yourself lately? Well, if 40 people say the same thing, not exactly the same here, but if you see commonalities in the criteria, which I'm sort of not showing you here, what you're able to see is there's a pattern emerging, and that's telling you we need to take action because it's not just an isolated case, it's spread across 4 different divisions or 3 different branches. So we take it from that level, that's high level, down to the detail level and back up again. And all of this information is available for any manager, executive or middle management. And so the key thing is that, number one, we can identify the disengagement. We can look at the quantity of people who are affected by their KPIs not being able to be met, their criteria. We can look at disengagement. We look at the value of the productivity losses. We can look at how much you have to budget for in terms of being able to replace the people if you want to replace them. We look at top 10 criteria of every person in the company if you want to, or any person that in a branch that you want to assess, that wants to be part of the process. We look at the top 10 things that they're looking for. We look at another 10, which enables them to be able to fulfill their duties. So altogether, we have 20 different criteria that you can look at and measure. So this is what I found when I was working throughout. The majority of it was in Asia and China and several times in the States and several times in the UK. But this is what I found was that if you really believe in looking at your staff, and one of the comments from the panel on the conference was that if you're not having the conversations with your staff, you need to. But it takes too much time to talk to your staff. Get them to tell you. And this is what the CPA does. And so the objective is to be able to bridge the gaps between C-suite, middle management, workforce, so that you're all working on the same page and you're all looking at the same kind of information and you're all sharing it interdepartmentally where you can. And so this is what the system is about. So hopefully, I'm not quite sure of the time here at the moment, but if there's any questions, I'm open to endeavoring to answer them.
Thanks, Des. Look, while we wait for a couple of questions, if there are any, and sometimes there are lots, and sometimes people don't have time, and we can always get some sent through afterwards. Look, I thought that was brilliant, and it's certainly a way of looking at organisations in a different way. Look, I've been involved in assessing organisations probably for about 25 years, which kind of shows my age. And I think some of the areas there, especially around leadership, being the key area of effectiveness, cultures, I don't think we really know what good looks like yet, but we're getting some that are emerging, which look okay. And certainly, I think that's a huge improvement to kind of start shaping stuff up and kind of going forward. And I just wondered, with past implementations of this system with the CPA, what are the benefits been looking like? What has the feedback been?
Well, as I've mentioned to you in previous discussions, David, it's a relatively new system, but we spent several years assessing it across multiple industries. And what we found was, and I'll give an example with an IT company. One of the challenges that they had was they had a particular leader who was brilliant in what he did, but his communication skills was not adequate enough. And what was happening was he was interfering with a lot of other managers and interfering directly with other employees. And so what was happening is that within the IT, they found that there was confusion between the strategy and what they're trying to achieve. There was confusion in relation to the documentation that was constantly pouring from HR regarding about what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. The standards in relation to documentation for specifications was grossly inadequate, which led to problems in other areas. And so if you can't get the specifications right, how can you write a system correctly? And so what we found is when we identified these areas, and there was probably about 5 areas that we looked at, and when they started to address those areas, the other areas that had been reported as having a problem, it just sort of dwindled away. Because everything is interrelated. When you fix one thing, something else is enhanced. And so with the IT company in particular, we had this situation where documentation and interference from senior management at a level which was not appropriate was resolved. And so by restructuring slightly, we found that. So I think I have to let you take a week there. What we found was that the interference from the management was we slightly restructured it, and everything seemed to resolve itself. And so not 100%, but the thing is, what we're looking at is how can we start the process of mitigation and start to see the results. So I have another example if you want. Would you like another example?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And we've also had a request that we share the session, which we'll do. So please go ahead.
We had a finance company, which was really interesting. There's about 30 people in the finance company, and they had software which was very successful. But the challenge they had was that there was a high turnover in staff, and one of the problems was that they were so successful that people got bored. They couldn't grow. They had a system which was just slightly enhanced every so often. So their major problem was staff turnover, critical people, because there was no growth within the organization. And so what we had to do is we looked at ways and, you know, where are they taking the company? Because if you don't change your strategy within the market, you're gonna have this all the time. Are there areas that you want to grow into where you could involve people to be part of that process when you're going into new areas, new markets, for example? And so this is where an example of being really successful can create headaches.
Excellent. And look, you mentioned, or you might have mentioned before, is there any way for any of our members maybe to trial this just so you can get some feedback, or they can just see what it's like so other people can learn from that?
Well, I would be honest, I would really welcome an opportunity to be able to take a portion of a company and say, let's do a trial so that you can actually see the potential for software. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's great. Look, a free trial's on the table. So if anyone would like to do that, please send an email to Risk New Zealand and we'll tee you up with Des and let's see how this works. So I've heard some fantastic things about it. It'd be great to see it in New Zealand. Look, no more questions at the moment, Des, but look, if anyone wants to send anything through, please do any time and I'll pass them on and even put you in contact with Des directly. I wanted to say thank you very much, Des, for today's presentation. It was absolutely brilliant. We will share it with everyone who attended. And yeah, let's do something else again soon so we can get some more information. Thank you.